Before we begin today's story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy emotionally driven stories that stay with you long after the video ends. Before I tell you what changed my marriage forever, I need to take you back to a time when everything looked perfect from the outside. We weren't unhappy. At least, that's what I told myself. My husband and I had built a life that others admired. A comfortable home, steady routines, polite conversations over dinner. From a distance we looked stable, blessed even. But sometimes stability can hide silence. It started with small things. Missed conversations. Evenings spent in separate rooms. The way we stopped asking each other how our day really felt, and instead asked only what needed to be done tomorrow. Marriage doesn't usually fall apart in one dramatic moment. It fades quietly. I remember one particular night. We were sitting across from each other at the dining table. The television hummed in the background, filling the space where laughter used to live. He looked tired. I probably did too. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Just work," he replied. And that was it. No follow-up. No curiosity. No reaching across the table. At the time, I didn't realize something important. Distance doesn't begin with anger. It begins with indifference. Weeks turned into months. We functioned like partners in responsibility rather than partners in connection. We paid bills. We attended family gatherings. We smiled in photographs. But inside, something fragile was cracking. I began to feel invisible in my own home. Not unloved, just unseen. And that feeling, of not being fully seen, can slowly reshape the way you see yourself. I told myself this was normal. That long marriages go through seasons. That maturity meant accepting routine over romance. But deep down, I knew something was changing. I just didn't know how far it would go. And I certainly didn't know that one unexpected conversation would force me to confront a truth I wasn't ready to face. That was the beginning. The beginning of a chapter one still struggled to forget. The truth didn't arrive loudly. It didn't come with shouting or broken glass. It came quietly. On an ordinary afternoon I almost forgot. I had gone to a small cafe near my workplace, hoping to clear my head before going home. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't searching for attention. I just needed a moment where I didn't feel like someone's wife, someone's daughter, someone's responsibility. Just me. That's when I ran into Daniel, an old acquaintance from years ago. We hadn't spoken in a long time, but he greeted me warmly, like no time had passed. We decided to sit for a few minutes. At first, it was harmless. We spoke about careers, about how quickly life moves, about how different adulthood feels compared to what we imagined. Then he asked a simple question. "Are you happy?" I laughed softly, instinctively. Of course. But he didn't laugh. He just looked at me, not in a romantic way, not in a dramatic way, but in a way that felt attentive. "You don't sound convinced," he said gently. And something inside me shifted. It wasn't attraction. It wasn't temptation. It was awareness. I realized I didn't actually know how to answer that question honestly. Was I unhappy? No. Was I fulfilled? I wasn't sure. That conversation stayed with me long after we left the cafe. Not because of Daniel, but because of what his question uncovered inside me. When I went home that evening, nothing had changed on the surface. My husband was on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Dinner needed to be prepared. The routine continued. But inside me, something was louder. I started noticing how often we avoided deeper conversations. How quickly we dismissed emotional topics. How easily we settled for fine. Over the next few weeks, Daniel sent a few polite messages. Nothing inappropriate. Just casual check-ins. And I responded. Not because I wanted something to happen, but because when he asked how I was doing, he actually waited for the answer. That scared me, because I began to realize the danger wasn't physical. It was emotional. And emotional distance can sometimes feel more powerful than anything else. I knew I was standing at the edge of something I didn't fully understand. A line hadn't been crossed, but I could see it. And for the first time in years, I had to ask myself a difficult question. Was I trying to fix my marriage? Or escape the parts of it that felt empty? That was the truth beginning to surface. And I wasn't sure I was ready for what came next. Daniel's messages were always normal and respectful. Hope you had a good day. Take care of yourself. There was nothing wrong with them. But I knew something inside me was changing. I started looking forward to his messages. I felt noticed when he asked how I was feeling. And that scared me. Because I was married. One evening, my husband came into the kitchen while I was preparing dinner. He looked at me and asked, "Have I been distant lately?" I was surprised. I could have said no. That would have been easier. But this time, I chose to be honest. "Maybe we both have," I said quietly. For the first time in a long time we really talked. Not about bills or work. Not about daily tasks. We talked about us. About how we had slowly stopped sharing our feelings. How we had become busy roommates instead of close partners. That night, I understood something important. Daniel was not the real problem. The real problem was the emotional distance in my marriage. Later, I sat alone in my room and opened my phone. I looked at Daniel's chat for a long moment. Then I typed, "I think I need to focus on my marriage. I hope you understand." He replied, "I respect that." That was no drama. No pressure. And in that moment, I felt something powerful. I had chosen my values. It wasn't about choosing between two men. It was about choosing the kind of person I wanted to be. Fixing a marriage is not easy. It takes honesty, effort, and patience. But I knew if I crossed that line, I would regret it for the rest of my life. So I didn't, and that decision changed everything. Choosing not to cross the line was only the beginning. The real work started after that. For a while, things felt fragile between us. Like we were walking across thin ice, careful not to cause another crack. Conversations were slower, more intentional, sometimes awkward. But they were honest. We began setting aside time for each other. Not out of obligation, but with purpose. No phones. No television humming in the background. Just two people relearning how to listen. It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand speeches. Just small, consistent efforts. One night, weeks later, my husband said something that stayed with me. "I didn't realize how far we had drifted," he admitted. "I thought routine meant stability. I didn't see it becoming distance." Neither had I. That was the hardest truth to accept. That neglect isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just gradual inattention. We both had responsibilities. Stress. Expectations. Life had become heavy. But marriage isn't sustained by responsibility alone. It's sustained by presence. We started doing the little things again. Checking in during the day. Asking real questions. Saying thank you. Saying I'm sorry. And slowly, something shifted. Not back to the way things were in the beginning, because we weren't those people anymore. But forward. Stronger. More aware. There were moments I still thought about that cafe question. "Are you happy?" This time, when I asked myself that question, the answer wasn't automatic. It was intentional. Happiness wasn't something I stumbled into. It was something we were building, deliberately. Months later, I realized something important. The hidden chapter of my marriage wasn't about almost losing it. It was about finally seeing it clearly. It forced me to confront my own silence. My own avoidance. My own need to feel seen. And instead of searching for that feeling elsewhere, I learned how to ask for it where it belonged. We didn't become a perfect couple, but we became honest partners. And sometimes, that's stronger than perfection. That chapter changed everything. Not because it ended my marriage, but because it taught me how to protect it. Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that save us. In facing the truth, I found the strength to rebuild my life and my marriage.